Everybody, welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. If you're all doing well on this beautiful Tuesday, start the podcast by saying thank you all for the overall support. You can catch, as always, you can catch me on Apple, on Spotify. You can follow us on our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, the works, and you can also listen to us on YouTube every single day. So you can find us there. But the world of sports is constantly moving. It's a constant shift. Day to day, narratives set in. Things change. A sport's in the spotlight, and then it decreases after people grow tired of seeing game after game. But there's something that's always happening, and that's that sports are constantly evolving. They're constantly shifting and moving. Injuries, narratives, special players doing special things. And yet, time after time, we have a new story. It could be, why is Deshawn Watson not going to play Thursday night for the Houston Texans? How is Tom Brady still playing quarterback at 44? Will Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner finally get over the hump for the Toronto Maple Leafs? Will Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson be signed before the start of the regular season? These questions are all in the air. This time last year, there was different things. There's a nationwide pandemic that we're all going through. We were wearing masks. We're still wearing masks. But the world and the world of sports is constantly shifting. But sometimes great characters remain in our lives for a long time. Tom Brady is 44, still playing the game. Jaromir Jagr, 49 years old, is still playing professional hockey in the Czech Republic for Kladno. Aaron Rodgers is in his 17th season as a quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, a record beating out Bart Starr and Brett Favre, who played 16 for the storied franchise. But is Aaron Rodgers the same guy he was even a few years ago? You could argue not. He's coming off the most tumultuous offseason of his career. It looked like he wanted to trade out of Green Bay. He, on draft day, saying he didn't want to return to the Patriots. To the Packers. He told Brian Gutekunst, Matt LaFleur, and the ownership group in Green Bay, I'm out of here. I'm sick of how you're running this organization. Good teams draft players in the first round to help me. You took Jordan Love. You could argue a reach of a pick at 24, who was coming off a terrible season at Utah State. And yet we get to training camp and Aaron Rodgers shows up with an Office t-shirt on and a man bun. A very different demeanor from the old Aaron Rodgers. We're used to saying relax or being a little passive aggressive. Yet this Aaron Rodgers was very honest. And he said he was mad at a lot of decisions they made. Likes Jordan. Didn't like how they told him about drafting Jordan Love. Didn't like that in the past they cut players such as Clay Matthews Jr., Randall Cobb, Charles Woodson, and he didn't have a say in the process. And through all of that, after back-to-back NFC championship games and a 5-point loss to the Bucs away from going to his second Super Bowl, Aaron Rodgers started week one as bad as you possibly could, losing 38-3 to the New Orleans Saints, the Drew Brees-less New Orleans Saints, with newly equipped Jameis Winston at quarterback. And it was stop the presses. The Green Bay Packers are sinking. Aaron Rodgers is finally on that decline. He's not that bad man anymore. He might have been MVP last year, but that's last year. And through this offseason, I don't think there's a player that had more pressure on him coming into the season than Aaron Rodgers. And after that week 1 loss and sitting on it from Sunday to the following Monday in a divisional game at Lambeau, you knew what was going to happen. Then week 2, Aaron Rodgers was going to come out and have a special performance, which he did last night. Aaron Rodgers was vintage Aaron Rodgers last night. He ran the offense with authority. He made checks at the line of scrimmage. But the bigger thing for me was that Aaron Rodgers took control of the game. He was the leader. You saw him before the game, getting the guys fired up, getting Robert Tonyan the ball, feeding Aaron Jones, and it was just a constant pounding of the Detroit Lions. Anytime the Detroit Lions got close, got even within an earshot of victory, Aaron Rodgers canceled it, put it to bed. And now the Packers sit at 1-1. Aaron Rodgers, after following a 2-interception, 121-yard opening day, reversed the curse, so to speak. In week 1, he threw a red zone interception. Last night, the Green Bay Packers went 4 for 4 in the red zone, a stark contrast from week 1. And Aaron goes 22 for 27, 255 yards, and 4 passing touchdowns, 3 of which went to his elite running back, Aaron Jones. And yes, it is a Tuesday. Week 2 is over. And I'm not going to overreact. They beat the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are one of the most moribund, pathetic franchises in pro sports in the last 30 plus years. The mention for the Dallas Cowboys is what can go wrong will go wrong. The Detroit Lions, everything has gone wrong. They've had 2 of the most talented players in the history of the NFL, in Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson, retire early because they didn't want to stick around, get their bodies battered to death, and be in Detroit where they knew nothing good was coming. Matthew Stafford, one of the toughest quarterbacks in the NFL, loved Detroit, drafted first overall, gave his blood, sweat, and tears to that organization for 10 plus years, eventually said, I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. So that's who the Green Bay Packers beat last night. Now, I think the Detroit Lions are showing some fight under new head coach Dan Campbell. They don't bite kneecaps off like he said they would in their opening press conference, but you're seeing a Detroit Lions team that has some fire, has some fight, does have some skill. TJ Hawkinson is one of the best tight ends in football. In that first half, I don't know if I've seen Jared Goff play better, and that includes his run to the Super Bowl with the Los Angeles Rams. But what can go wrong will go wrong. In the third quarter, they start the second half up 3 points. The Detroit Lions ran 9 plays. Jared Goff turned the ball over. It was a disaster. And when the fourth quarter started, the game was over. And Detroit is now 0-2 with the Minnesota Vikings at the bottom of the NFC North. But for Green Bay, you got to be happy with Aaron Jones. I thought he was the best player on the field. You could say Aaron Rodgers. He was fantastic. Rodgers passed to Davante Adams down the field on a 3rd and 12. Just a gutsy throw. Not many people are making that throw, and not many have the confidence to do it on a 3rd and 12. Aaron Rodgers can do it routinely. You see him just slinging the ball, going to Randall Cobb, going to Jones, to Darvin Adams, spreading the ball around. And another big thing, Aaron Jones has 3 receiving touchdowns. He had 4 touchdowns for the game because he rushed in one later. But Aaron Rodgers just was a surgeon. He'd roll out, find Aaron Jones, find him in the flat, do interesting concepts to put his team in a position to succeed. And now they are 1-1. They are tied atop the NFC North, what looks to be one of the weaker divisions in football, with the Chicago Bears, who have uncertainty at quarterback and have uncertainty as a franchise with Matt Nagy at the helm. So after a week 1 of paranoia, overreacting, and just what's wrong with Aaron Rodgers, for today and for the next few days, that narrative's put to bed. Now, I believe that the Green Bay Packers are the best team in this division. I believe the Green Bay Packers will win this division quite easily. But that does not mean that the Green Bay Packers are as good as they were the last 2 seasons, because I don't believe they are. And the biggest red flag this team has is their defense. Jared Goff did whatever he wanted to do in that first half. The Green Bay Packers couldn't stop a nosebleed. They were a sieve. And Jared Goff was throwing passes to Cephas, to Hawkinson, wide open. And in the third quarter, if he doesn't have a terrible read on a 4th and 1, where he throws the ball to the outside to an outstretched arms of Cephas, when he had Khalif Raymond or Darren Fells wide open in the slot, maybe we have a different game. They turn the ball over there. Green Bay goes down the field and scores. That was curtains. But decisions like that could have changed the game. Green Bay's defense, you could say, okay, they didn't allow a point in the second half, but I don't think they played that well. Jared Goff just made some really poor decisions with the football. He fumbled a snap that was recovered by Green Bay. He threw that terrible pass like I just mentioned. It wasn't guys like Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary stepping up and making a play. On the contrary, Jair Alexander was getting burnt by guys. And you've seen Cephas, Hawkinson, nobody could stop them. And you look ahead. Detroit has some good running backs in DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, the former Green Bay Packer. But they're not elite running backs. And Detroit doesn't have an elite offensive scheme. I believe Anthony Lynn called a great game in the first half last night. It was very creative. And I like Jared Goff looked confident. He didn't look like Sean McVay, where Sean McVay never trusted Jared Goff, and you could tell, and it hurt him as a quarterback. It hurt his development because he didn't have a coach that believed in him. I think Dan Campbell truly does believe in Jared Goff, and he wants it to work. Now, I don't think Jared Goff is their answer long-term at quarterback, but one can dream and one can hope. But you look ahead. Anthony Lynn is a good OC. He was a good head coach in Los Angeles, but he never got his team to a playoff victory, never won a division title, so he was limited with his achievements. Now, Kyle Shanahan has made it to 2 Super Bowls. One with the Atlanta Falcons as their offensive coordinator, where Matt Ryan won the MVP, his final year there as the offensive coordinator. Julio Jones had his career year in receiving yards. Devontae Freeman ran for over 1,000 yards on the ground. And the Atlanta Falcons should have won the Super Bowl. They dominated these same Green Bay Packers in the NFC Championship game. But yet, in the Super Bowl, up 28-3, Kyle Shanahan didn't have the wherewithal, didn't have the forethought to run the football with one of the best backs at the time, Devontae Freeman, who now plays for the Baltimore Ravens. Run the football, you win the game. But now we look at history, 28-3, the Tampa Bay the New England Patriots come all the way back beat the Falcons, and the Falcons have not been the same since. Dan Quinn has since been fired. He's in Dallas as defensive coordinator, and life goes on. But Shanahan was there for that. He left, and he got a head coaching job in San Francisco. First year, trades with Jimmy Garoppolo. CJ Beathard moved out. Jimmy Garoppolo went through some injuries. But Garoppolo, the next year he comes back, he gets to a Super Bowl. In the NFC divisional round, Jimmy Garoppolo threw 8 passes, and San Francisco still beat the Minnesota Vikings because of their elite running attack. The way he used running backs creatively, the way he used guys like Deebo Samuel, who can just beat guys in space with his speed and his power, it was something to behold. Kyle Shanahan is one of the best offensive minds in football today. A chip off the old block of his Super Bowl winning father, Mike, who won a pair of Super Bowls with the Denver Broncos. So, a lackluster defense who haven't looked good through 2 weeks. Give up 35 in week 1. Very lackluster in the first half last night. And you have Kyle Shanahan. And yes, the running backs for San Francisco are depleted. Elijah Mitchell was injured this week. Hasty was injured in the game. Even fullback Kyle Juszczyk, Raheem Mostert tore his ACL. He's done for the season. But it doesn't seem to matter who's in the backfield for San Francisco. It's a plug-and-play team where they can find results from anyone. And what has been Aaron Rodgers' kryptonite over the last number of years? The Bay Area. In the first NFC Championship game, he played in San Francisco, where he got destroyed 35-13. The 49ers ran all over them that day. Rodgers had 2 interceptions. The game was not close. And he lost the following year in another ugly performance in San Francisco. Now, Aaron is from the Bay Area. He went to Cal. He knows the LA, California area well, but it has not been a pretty sight for Aaron Rodgers. So today you can sit on the narrative of Aaron played well, but he beat a bad team, which I think is fair. He still played well. You got to give a guy credit for playing well, but you also look ahead. And Sunday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers head to San Francisco on a short week. They head on the West Coast to play the 49ers, who started their season off 2-0. Jimmy Garoppolo looks good. You still have Kyle Shanahan, and the running game will be okay because you have a great offensive line with the likes of Trent Williams, and you have the best blocking tight end in football in George Kittle. So is Green Bay a threat to get back to the NFC Championship game? To me, I like the Rams more than I like the Packers. I like the Buccaneers more than I like the Packers. That will put them third on that depth chart. The NFC is not loaded with talent, yet I have 2 teams in front of them. Only 2 can get there. And you could argue the NFC West with the Rams and San Francisco, Arizona look pretty damn good as well. So what this season is for Green Bay, this regular season, it's not just a cakewalk. Okay, you'll win your division. What if you get dumped in the wild card game? That's a failure of a season. They're quoting the season as the last dance. The Bulls, the 97-98 Bulls. That means it's Super Bowl or bust for Aaron Rodgers, Matt LaFleur, and co. And they're going to have tough challenges along the way. But that first one is Sunday night. Sunday night in San Francisco, where that team is loaded on defense with the likes of Nick Bosa, with what they do up front, getting pressure on the quarterback. And it's where it starts for Green Bay to me. Okay, you got your win. Good for you. But you look ahead. San Francisco, not an easy game. Then they play the Steelers. Yeah, it's at home. It's still not an easy game for Green Bay. Then, I believe they're on their bye week. So they go Cincinnati. Cincinnati, easier game. I give you that. They play the Bears. Division games are never easy. Look at last night. Very close game till late. Then they play the Washington football team. No gimme. At Arizona. No gimme there. So I'm not going to go through their whole schedule, but it's not. They also play the Chiefs this year in Arrowhead. This is not an easy schedule for Green Bay. Most people just look at a team and say, oh, they'll get 13 wins. They'll go 13-4, not the 17-week schedule. You got to look at their opponents. Yes, they get lucky because they play the Bears, Vikings, and Lions 6 times. You could maybe say, okay, 6 wins. But who else is on their schedule? And I just think this is a fact. People get up for Green Bay. They like playing Green Bay. They want to beat them. They're one of the most historically relevant franchises in pro sports. And let's just be honest. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is that well liked. He's got an arrogant bravado about him. He comes off very cavalier. And while he's one of the best players to ever play the position, one could argue the most talented, you look at his career. He's got 1 Super Bowl. Hasn't been in the Super Bowl in 10 plus years. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. He should have more than 1 Super Bowl. His talent level, some of the teams he's had over the years, in my opinion, he should have more than 1. He should at least have more than 1 appearance. He's got the same amount of Super Bowl appearances as Bruce Johnson and Jimmy Garoppolo and Trent Dilfer. Those aren't even in his stratosphere as a quarterback. So this team will continue to be interesting this year. And San Francisco Green Bay Sunday night will be a must watch. Another solo primetime game for Aaron Rodgers to show everybody that he's not sliding. He's not falling off. And he did that last night. But you have a bigger test in a place where you've had limited to no success over the last number of years. And that'll be talked about for the rest of the week. I'll talk about it. Matt Wright and I will discuss it on Friday as we head into week 3. But Aaron Rodgers answered the questions for last night. He got a win. ESPN is not having their best day ever like I mentioned yesterday, being completely horned up, having get up this morning with Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay being 0-2, losing to the hapless Detroit Lions. They don't get to run that story. But they remain interesting, and they'll stay in the news cycle for a long time, as long as Aaron Rodgers continues to be Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay still in Wisconsin. Looking ahead, week 3 starts Thursday night. And normally hearing Panthers-Texans, you'd be very tired. You give the old Bill Belichick, we're on to Cincinnati. But there's actually some intrigue in this game. There's some storylines that you wouldn't expect. I don't think many people expected the Carolina Panthers to be 2-0. You might expect a win against the New York Jets. Of course, it's the Jets. But for them to dominate the New Orleans Saints the way they did, it was an impressive victory. Sam Darnold has looked more than competent at quarterback over his first 2 weeks as the starter for the Carolina Panthers. And now we head into this game where Carolina can be 3-0. They are playing a team with one of the worst, just when it comes to the roster, one of the weakest rosters in the NFL. To start the season 3-0 and put yourself in a position to be tied with Tampa Bay, you couldn't have drawn it up better for Matt Rule, Joe Brady, and co. So I'm interested to see Sam Darnold. I think it's a spotlight game for Sam on a solo stage to really show people I'm not the guy that was seeing ghosts in New York. I'm not a third overall pick that's a bust. I'm going to have a second curtain call here in Carolina. I'm moving on to a new team, and I'm going to have the ultimate success. I'm going to be an elite quarterback in this league. And again, that narrative remains to be seen. But through 2 weeks, you like his progress. You like Robbie Anderson. You like having Christian McCaffrey back. Brandon Zylstra's been making good stages in the receiving game. This team is getting better, and the position group to watch Thursday night is that defensive line and the way they get after quarterbacks, the way they force Jameis Winston to throw an ugly interception on Sunday into double coverage, the amount of quarterback pressures they're getting, and we'll see what they do to Houston. Now, on the other side of the ball, Houston has an interesting story for another reason. Deshawn Watson is one of the top 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. No doubt about it. It's a back-to-back national championship games in college for Clemson, narrowly losing to Alabama in his sophomore season. Then in his junior season, beating Alabama at the buzzer with a clutch pass to win the college football playoff. And from there, he gets drafted by the Texans. He wills the team to the playoffs in his first year. He started to rack up yardage. He had a great connection with Deshaun Watson. And it looked like Houston was on the rise. They lost to Kansas City after leading 24-3, but they still had a lot of promise. But from there, it's been a disaster. They traded DeAndre Hopkins and got virtually nothing for him. Bill O'Brien has been fired. J.J. Watt has been cut. Whitney Merciless is off this team. And it has gotten old fast. And any player other than Laramie Tunsil has limited to no value. Deshaun Watson is still there. He requested a trade in the offseason. However, he, as we all know, has had some problems. Was getting massages. Women are alleging that he did some inappropriate things to them. Now he's got a court date set up for February. That's, at the end of the NFL season. So what it looks like now is that Deshaun Watson could play Thursday night. He's not been suspended by the NFL. But it looks like David Culley and him have come to an agreement. He's going to be a good player. He'll be around the facility. You won't see him much. But he's not going to play this season. They want to keep his value as long as they can. Nick Caserio, the new GM, wants to trade him for as much as he possibly can down the road when his legal problems are either completed or he goes to prison. But they want his value to be high so that they can trade him to a Miami, to a Philadelphia, to an Atlanta down the line and get full value for this player. Makes sense. And so that left Tyrod Taylor, the veteran, who started as a backup in Baltimore, then pivoted to Chicago, then went to Cleveland, Los Angeles Charger, and now finally had his opportunity to be a starting quarterback again in Houston. Had a great week 1, beat the Jacksonville Jaguars, was playing fantastic through a half in week 2 when he hurt his hamstring, missed the entire second half, and it looks like he's going to be out for a while. And that left Davis Mills, the rookie from Stanford, to come in. And what this is for the Houston Texans, what the season is a dress rehearsal. It's a stand-in where Davis Mills is likely not the answer long-term at quarterback. Now, could he be potentially? Sure. And he will get that opportunity over the next couple weeks to show that he is. But it also shows us just how anemic they have Deshaun Watson on the roster. He's not going to be dressed. Even with an injury to Tyrod, he will not be active on Thursday. Davis Mills will start. And it's just crazy to think how the mighty have fallen, where this guy led the NFL in passing yards last year. But the Houston Texans are interesting because they got some storylines. They don't have a great roster, but you want to see rookies play and how they look. Can Davis Mills be an NFL quarterback? Maybe it's not in Houston, but if he plays well enough where Houston gets a top 4 to 5 pick and they see a quarterback that they like, Davis Mills could depart Houston, be an ex-Gardner Minshew, and potentially get a starting job down the line for another franchise. So there is interest there. How does Houston, and it's still not the most sexy matchup in the world, but it has more than you think. And it'll be interesting to watch Houston all year, how they deal with this. When does Tyrod come back? Does Deshawn Watson ever get on the field? I highly doubt it. But stranger things have happened. And we'll have to keep our eyes on it as we go. But they announced today, David Culley, the head coach, announced today that it will be Davis Mills. And Jeff Driscoll, who's currently on the practice squad, will be elevated and back up Davis Mills on Thursday night. So it's the NFL is constantly moving, like I said. And you finish a game Monday night, and week 3 already starts on Thursday. So, there'll be storylines all week. Carson Wentz has sprained both ankles. Will he be able to play against Tennessee? Tua is day-to-day. Will he be active when they go to Vegas? There's injuries galore. Jarvis Landry has a sprained MCL. He's out week to week. How long is Bradley Chubb going to be out for the Denver Broncos? He's pivotal on their defense. Injuries pile up, and storylines will continue to grow as the season goes on. And, it's just a constant machine of things happening. For a while, when the sports is on their offseason, you see tons of stories. When the offseason starts, because it's free agency. There's trades, player movement. And you saw that in the NHL, where on the first day of free agency, like it is every year, free agent frenzy, guys were moving. You saw Frederik Andersen depart Toronto. You saw Zach Hyman go to Edmonton. We've seen trades where Ryan Ellis went from Nashville to Philadelphia. Phil Myers the other way. Nolan Patrick is now in Las Vegas. Big things have happened. Lineups have changed. The Vancouver Canucks have dumped off a lot of bad contracts to the Arizona Coyotes, and they now have a much more competent roster in a Pacific Division that doesn't look to be overly difficult, overly tough. And they look like they could be a playoff team this year. A stark contrast from where they started last season. So now we look, and there's a lull. Not much happens. Guys are going through their off seasons. You see the occasional story where a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning have their day with the Stanley Cup. You enjoy it for a second and you move on. But on the eve of training camps open, we are in what I like to call PTO season, where veterans are getting signed to pro tryouts. And today, those guys happen to be guys like Alex Galchenyuk, who is returning to Arizona on a pro tryout. Was traded from Montreal to Arizona. He's back there on a PTO. You got Bobby Ryan, who is back to Detroit. Played with them last season after a 1-year, $1 million deal. He's on a pro tryout. Frederick Gauthier, you've seen that. You see him go to New Jersey. Guys are going around the league just trying to get into training camp and get their opportunity to try to crack a roster. That's what's happening now. Also, what will be happening in the coming days? Rookies. Can a 19-year-old crack a roster? Now, this year is going to be very interesting because Owen Power, the first overall pick in the draft, is not playing in the NHL. He's back at Michigan. Matty Beniers is back at Michigan, the second overall pick to Seattle. Will Mason McTavish, the third overall pick, make Anaheim's roster? A lot of these top picks are NCAA kids, and they decide to go back to play at their respective schools. Now, 4 of them are from Michigan. They wanted to run it back, see if they can win a national championship after coming up short last season. But could a New Brunswick boy like Luca Cormier surprise some people and make the Las Vegas roster? Well, that's a long shot, but if he has a good camp, could he do it? Does Quentin Byfield automatically make the roster for the LA Kings? Or does he get sent back for more seasoning? Does he start his season in Ontario playing for the Reign? These stories are all going to come out. Preseason games start as early as Saturday. And what's really interesting now is just remembering where everybody went. Nikita Zadorov is no longer a Chicago Blackhawk. He's playing for the Calgary Flames. Sean Monahan and Johnny Gaudreau are still in Calgary, to mine, and I'm sure a lot of Calgary's fans' dismay, saying, what did we do here? There's a question of, did Philly get better this offseason? Did moving on from Jake Voracek, did adding Ryan Ellis, getting Rasmus Ristolainen, are we better? Can Carter Hart find his game? Can he be that elite goaltender that we thought he was going to be? That remains to be seen. And there's a lot to be determined here. A lot of different headlines, a lot of different things that we need to figure out. But on the eve of NHL training camps, it's all about what if. And it's all about optimism right now. Every franchise other than, I would say, Arizona, Buffalo, potentially New Jersey, but even New Jersey likely has a whiff of optimism because they have Dougie Hamilton. You have PK Subban saying he's still one of the best defensemen in the NHL, which no one believes. But you have, well, maybe we can do this. Can we do it? You have every team in the Pacific Division other than Arizona who I think should be of the opinion we can make the playoffs. There's no reason the LA Kings should not come into this season and say we can make the playoffs in this division. There's no reason the Calgary Flames, the Edmonton Oilers, there are organizations who will have more pressure in certain divisions. Looking at the Pacific, if the Vegas Golden Knights don't make the playoffs, which I think it's a very long shot that they won't, that is a disastrous season. That's one where you look at Peter DeBoer and he's likely fired. Now, if they have a season where they don't get very far, if they lose in the first round, we've seen what happened with Gerard Gallant. He didn't last long. That it could be curtains for Peter DeBoer, who I think is still one of the best head coaches in the NHL, has been to a Stanley Cup final with 2 separate organizations, including New Jersey, who have been inept since they fired him. Edmonton, you went out and got Zach Hyman. You've got Connor McDavid, the best player in the world. You have Leon Draisaitl, a top 5 player in the world. You signed Darnell Nurse. Missing the playoffs, not winning a playoff round is not acceptable. Ken Holland does not have that much longer as a GM. He's not 95, but he's not 31 either. He's not a spring chicken, and you don't do this forever. It's a grind to be a general manager. For Calgary, Brad Treliving, I don't know how you still have a job, but if it goes south, if it's a tough start to the season for Calgary, he fired Jeff Ward and brought in Daryl Sutter. He doesn't have another bullet in that chamber. And if he does, then shame on the Calgary ownership for being too cheap during a pandemic. Sports is about winning. And sometimes you have to flatline, meaning tank or rebuild to get there or move some pieces around. Calgary has chipped around at the edges for years, and it's gotten them in the same place. Missed the playoffs or losing the first round. Mediocrity. I'd rather be terrible than be mediocre. Finishing last is much more beneficial than finishing 17th, in my humble opinion. because you get a first overall. I'd rather be the worst team in the NHL than lose in the first round. Ownership wouldn't agree with me because you get a little bit of revenue from those couple of games. But guess what? You lose in the first round one year, unless you have stars on your team, which Calgary doesn't. Sean Monahan and Johnny Gaudreau are not superstars. They just aren't. Johnny Gaudreau was a star briefly. Sean Monahan was a very good player. They're cooked. Monahan's body just can't do it anymore. Johnny Gaudreau, he's not the guy to be the man on a team. But you look around, and I'm sure Calgary is very optimistic. The Toronto Maple Leafs, on paper, are not as good as they were last season. Anybody who tells me that they are is on crack. But there's optimism around Michael Bunting. Can this guy be a really effective little pain in the ass forward for us? Can Rasmus Sandin take that next step and really elevate our defense core? Morgan Riley, will he be so motivated in a contract year, also in an Olympic year, to impress the Team Canada coaching staff and GM that he's just the man? There's all these. This is the perfect time of year just to be, maybe that can happen, because nobody can say it won't, because we don't know yet. We haven't seen the receipts. We're still waiting for them. Now, the only receipts that we know definitively are that Buffalo and Arizona are a tire fire. That's what I can tell you definitively today. Now, do I think the Chicago Blackhawks are going to be better with the additions of Marc-Andre Fleury, Seth Jones, the return of Jonathan Toews? Yes, I do. But do I know that? No, I haven't seen them play yet. Do I think that Colton Parayko is going to have a breakout year for the St. Louis Blues and make the Canadian Olympic team over Morgan Riley? I do. I don't know that yet either. I haven't seen him play this year. Do I think this is the last year for Morgan Riley in Toronto? I do. And do I think he'll make $7 million somewhere next season? $7+ million? More than likely. There's predictions, projections, but in the hockey world, like in football in the preseason, for fans, teams, individual players, it's all about optimism and why not right now? Because nobody can say, you're not. You can hear a comment on Twitter, you're not going to do that. But who cares? Because they haven't seen you on the ice yet. People can say the Tampa Bay Lightning, the only thing you can say is Tampa Bay they're marked because they've won back-to-back Stanley Cups. There's a lot of food for thought that the Florida Panthers are going to have a breakthrough season. I'm one of those people. I think they can win the Atlantic. But I want to see them play as a team. Does Carter Verhaeghe play as good as he did last season? Can he bring that level again this year? I think it's really important. Does the signing of Joe Thornton mean anything? No. But can he bring anything? Does goalie Bob finally find his game in Florida? A huge reason why that team would have some success. Spencer Knight is the heir apparent, but you still have Bobrovsky under contract for another 5 years, making 10.5 sheets per. It's a time of reflection. It's a time of maybe we can do this. Very few teams don't have that right now. The Red Wings don't. Buffalo, Arizona. But I would argue even teams that last year you could look at and say, don't have a whole lot of optimism. The Ottawa Senators are in a different position right now. Now, I don't expect them to make the playoffs, but I expect them to be better than they were last year. Thomas Chabot, Brady Tkachuk, Connor Brown, they're all a year older. Josh Norris, Drake Batherson, Jacob Bernard-Docker. These younger players are all coming in with nothing to lose and everything to gain. And perhaps they go on a heater, they surprise the world, and they end up in a wild card spot. I think it's a long shot, but again, optimism right now in the NHL. Even through the preseason games, it's not going to be doom and gloom. It's going to be, well, maybe. Well, that kid looks pretty good. And that's where we stand. And before we jump off the hockey topic, I just seen this afternoon. Again, I don't listen to the sound of a lot of games, but I read that Jim Houston, the longtime broadcaster, is retiring. He did a lot of. He's 42 years, a dozen Stanley Cup Finals, 2 World Series, and 2 Olympic Games. He's hanging up. He was the lead play-by-play with Craig Simpson for Sportsnet. He did not call many games last year because of the pandemic. He's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. He won the Foster Hewitt Award in 2019. It's an end of an era for him. He worked well with Craig Simpson. You have Chris Cuthbert there now. I didn't always love him and the way he called games. He's very Canadian biased, but it doesn't change the fact he's very good at calling a game. And to Jim Houston, a great career. Hope you enjoy retirement. And him, Bob Cole, they were icons at Sportsnet at Hockey Night in Canada. You could hear their voice every Saturday night calling a Leaf game. You knew who they were. You know what they sounded like. And he's been on the call for many great games over the years, and I'm sure Sportsnet will miss him going forward. But hats off to Jim Houston on a great career, and all the best moving forward for you. Now, Jim called 2 World Series, and the team that he usually calls is the Toronto Maple Leafs. Well, their counterpart right down the road, they're friends. The Toronto Blue Jays, I'm sure, have their eyes set on a World Series down the road, but for right now, their biggest hope and their goal is to make the wild card game. They are, trailing the Tampa Bay Rays. They're not going to be catching them for the division crown, but they are in a battle with the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees for that top/second wild card position. And with less than 2 weeks remaining in the season, every game counts. Over the weekend, the Blue Jays took care of business, taking 2 or 3 from the Twins, while the New York Yankees got blown out twice by the Cleveland Indians, including Garrett Cole getting pounded twice as well, getting pounded on Sunday. So that leads us into the week where this is a big week. Yankees and Red Sox play later in the week. That series starts on Friday. But for this week, for the Toronto Blue Jays, they are in Tampa Bay, down at Tropicana Field, playing the Rays for the final time this season. And last night was a great opportunity for them. They won 2 or 3 last week, but you have your ace on the mound, Robbie Ray, the likely winner of the AL Cy Young Award. But to the Rays' credit, the bottom of their lineup are just feisty hitters. You have Taylor Wall as the shortstop. Kevin Kiermaier goes 2 for 2 and then forces an error by Jake Lamb at third when he airmails a throw. And it was just a tough night for Ray where he couldn't get guys out easily. Yandy Diaz was a tough hitter on him, going 2 for 3, and Gurriel robbed him of a third hit. Pitch counts went long, and that was the key, where they got to Ray a little bit scoring runs, but they also they forced him out of the game. He only went 4 2/3. It's been clockwork for Robbie Ray to go 7. Then he can go to Adam Simber or Tim Meza, go to Jordan Romano. The game's over. The Blue Jays get the win. And after having a 2-0 lead following solo home runs by Teoscar Hernandez and Lourdes Gurriel Jr., it was Tampa Bay that just fought. You had Yandy Diaz with a 3-run shot in the 5th. Again, Lamb throwing error, Wendell scored. Manuel Margot with a single, Joey Wendell with a homer in the 8th. And the Toronto Blue Jays have been known to be a feisty team, and you saw that last night. They're down 6-2. In the 9th, they get a leadoff walk. Marcus Semien comes to the plate. He scores himself and George Springer. Then they get the bases loaded, but they end up losing the game. But they didn't quit in the 9th. They had a lot of fight. But to their disappointment, the New York Yankees also picked up a win last night, beating the Texas Rangers 4-3, hanging on. So this race continues to be nip and tuck as we head into the home stretch here. As we look at the wild card, the Boston Red Sox have a 1.5 game lead on the Toronto Blue Jays for that top wild card position. Now, the Blue Jays do have a game in hand, but nevertheless, they trail Boston by 1.5 games. New York now trails the Blue Jays by 0.5 game. The Blue Jays have a game in hand on the Yankees, which they'll get on Thursday when they play the Twins. Yankees have an off day preparing for the Red Sox. The Oakland Athletics are the sneaky team here because they are 2 games back, but they also had a setback last night, losing to Seattle, who are 3 games out of the wild card. And I thought they were done for a while, but they continue to fight. Last night, they get a win against Oakland, where Oakland could have made up a lot of ground and put themselves back in a position to be right there with the Yankees and Blue Jays. But nevertheless, Seattle keeps fighting. They're not out of this yet. But what's the biggest thing here? To me, down the stretch, it's not about the bats for the Blue Jays. The bats will be there. Vladdy, Bichette, they've been phenomenal all year. Vladdy's already got over 100 RBIs. Bichette will get over 100. You have Marcus Semien, who might get to 40 home runs. That's all well and good. But it's about what your starting pitchers can do over the next few games. The Red Sox starting pitching is not great, but they go in to play the Mets tonight. The Mets are still in a race, but the Mets aren't as motivated as a team like Boston, and Boston's been on a heater as they prepare for the Mets. The Yankees tonight get Jordan Montgomery. Against, the best thing they can say is he's not a great pitcher, but they're playing against Texas. They're one of the lowest scoring teams in baseball. They've been out of it since day one. The Blue Jays have the Rays. Drew Rasmussen is starting the game tonight. He pitched fantastic last week, went 5 innings for the Rays, then they went to their bullpen, and they had 4 innings from relievers, and that was the game. And you'll see Alek Manoah, arguably the second best pitcher for the Toronto Blue Jays, hit the mound tonight. Hyun-Jin Ryu is on the IL. He's been a disaster for the Blue Jays lately. He's dealing with some neck tightness. He's out. But to me, this is a very important. They finish the series tomorrow. It's an afternoon game before they head to Minnesota. Now they could still take 2 out of 3 of this series, but tomorrow it's unknown who the Blue Jays are going to start. It might be Ross Stripling because it's Hyun-Jin Ryu's start. So Stripling is a starter, likely a bullpen arm if they get to the playoffs, but he could start tomorrow. Potentially go to Thomas Hatch, who's pitched some since coming back to the majors, against Michael Wacha, who's not exactly been phenomenal this year. But tonight, Manoah gives the Blue Jays the best chance to win remaining in this series. Better than Stripling or Hatch on Wednesday afternoon. Taking care of business when you have opportunities. And yes, the Blue Jays have the toughest matchup this evening. But the Yankees and Red Sox play each other this weekend. You should be able to make up ground. But we see the Twins, they're playing tough baseball. Teams are going to want to play spoiler to the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, we'll see if that happens. But for these Yankees, for the Blue Jays, for Oakland, who plays Seattle tonight, it's about starting pitching. Can you get it from a guy? Can a guy make a big start and make a huge impact that leads to a win? This would be a career-defining game for Alek Manoah. You go on the road with less than 2 weeks remaining in the season on a Tuesday night where you only have the second wild card by a half game and you get a victory, that would be huge for this team. And we'll see what he can produce tonight. But as baseball season winds down, I mentioned hockey, it's all about optimism right now. It's polar opposite in baseball where we know where teams are. It's just about, can you will your team there? Can Oakland find another wave? Could they put themselves back in position? San Francisco has been the best team in baseball for almost the entire season. They've been ahead of the Dodgers, but the season's not done yet. Do they have enough fight? Do they have enough wherewithal? Does Kevin Gausman have enough good starts to get them to that winning the NL West? Gausman's 14-6 with a 2.78 ERA, and he's been phenomenal. But they play the Padres tonight, who are sinking more and more as the days go by. But you know this team's not going to quit. They're 4 games out of the wild card with St. Louis on a heater. They can't lose right now. They won in Milwaukee last night. But you never know. You're not going to see quit from San Diego. Manny Machado is not a guy who's going to quit. Tatis Jr. is still a stud. Joe Musgrove is on the mound for the Padres tonight. He's got a no-hitter this season. He's got a sub-3 ERA. He's been a great pitcher. But can the Giants will their way to that NL West title? The Dodgers. You have the second best record in baseball. If you can't get that lead over the next 2 weeks, you're going to be playing in a wild card game. Julio Urias, Max Scherzer continue to be the man. The Dodgers are the better team. They have better pitching. They should have an advantage over the next couple weeks because you can throw Scherzer every 5th day. You can throw Kershaw. You can throw Urias, who's 18-3 on the season. He's got the most wins in all of baseball. And tonight, they go up against the Colorado Rockies, who are 9 games below 500. What will happen there? Who has more in the tank to get their team to first in the NL West and avoid that wild card game where it looks like it's going to be against St. Louis? And let me tell you, I don't want to play St. Louis because that team gets into the playoffs and they're dangerous. Adam Wainwright in a 1-game playoff, I don't want a piece of that guy. He can still pitch. He's 40 years old, but he's still got the goods. You got Yadier Molina, a multiple-time World Series champion. Who can call a game better than him? Still, his bat's not what it used to be, but catching, when you call it throwing guys out, being a leader, willing that team to a victory. If I'm San Francisco, if I'm Los Angeles, I don't care if I'm playing at home. I do not want St. Louis coming. I'd rather have the day off and I'll play the winner of that wildcard game in the divisional round where it's best of 5 and you have more options than a 1-game series. In the National League East, Philadelphia, you've had the easiest schedule since the All-Star break. What's happening? Last night you lose to Baltimore. With less than 2 weeks left in the season, you cannot lose to Baltimore. Again, you look at pitching, but also Bryce Harper. You were signed in Philadelphia to get this team to not just playoffs, but contend for a World Series. The Washington Nationals won a World Series the season you were traded from the roster. That's not a good look on you. It's a terrible look. Will this team? You're trailing Atlanta. I get it. But you're only down by 3 games. Atlanta this week has the Diamondbacks, but you've blown it. You've had terrible teams. You lose twice to the Mets this weekend. That can't happen. You can't lose to Baltimore last night. Philly, win these games. Atlanta lost twice to San Francisco, and you couldn't make up ground. And it just shows you the perseverance of some teams that want it more. Atlanta has been without Ronald Acuna Jr., one of the best players in baseball since before the All-Star break. They are in first place. They shouldn't be. The Mets had a huge lead. They blew it because they're the Mets, and mental fortitude and willingness to get your team to this position sometimes is just, that's what it's all about. And like I said, sports are always shifting, and different sports have different moments, different feelings at different times. In hockey, it's about eternal optimism right now. In football, it's more of what's happening. Who's the good teams here? How good are the Packers? Are Carolina for real? Could the Raiders win the AFC West? Or in baseball, it's we need to win tonight. College football, it's are Michigan really that good? They beat Western Michigan. They've beaten Washington. They crushed Northern Illinois. Have they beaten anybody yet? And the Pac-12 is BYU a threat to Oregon? Can the Ducks run the clock? Run out their schedule? How good is Penn State? We know how good the whiteout is. It was one of the most phenomenal sporting events I've ever seen. I've never seen a crowd so rabid. But how good is Penn State? Could they get into the college football playoff? Beat Wisconsin already this year, a ranked team. Beat Auburn this year, a ranked team. Can Clemson turn it around? Can DJ Uiagalelei, is he the quarterback long-term for Clemson? Alabama wins by 2 points against Florida. They're vulnerable. Can A&M do anything to pressure them? Can the Arkansas Razorbacks, who are playing Texas A&M this week, ranked for the first time in a while, could they pull off an upset? How good is JT Daniels in Georgia? You see, you go through different sports, we're all in a different mindset. And who's going to win the Heisman? We're still finding where in baseball, we know likely our MVP favorites. We know our great pitchers, but it's in these it's about go get a win. It's not about, well, maybe in the next 2 months we can turn around. It's 2 weeks to play here. You have 2 weeks to get to the playoffs. And for teams like the Toronto Blue Jays, the Atlanta Braves, the Philadelphia Phillies, the St. Louis Cardinals, the San Diego Padres, Yankees, Red Sox, Oakland, what do you got? Who wants it the most? Because over these next 2 weeks, it's not over yet. If you're down 3 games, it's unlikely, but saying it's over right now, then it is over. Because you believe you've lost before you started, then you might as well not even shown up and done it. But for baseball over the next couple weeks, it's just about finding ways to win. And we'll see what teams want it the most over the next week and change. But as I said off the top, sports are constantly moving. They're constantly in different states. And as training camps open, as baseball winds down, there's a lot happening. We can all be very fortunate for that. We can complain, which I do, that starting tomorrow we have to wear a mask in New Brunswick. I don't believe that we should have to wear a mask. Again, I'm not going to tell people to get vaccinated or not, but I don't want to wear a mask. I did it forever. It's stupid. But what we can take as a positive is that we have a lot of sports going on. And for myself, I can touch a lot of different areas, and it's all interesting. So, like I said, Matt Wright's going to join me later in the week. Seamus will be back tomorrow. We're going to talk some Breaking Bad. That's always fun. We'll learn how he did on his CPA. So, everyone, thanks for tuning in today. Hope you enjoyed the show. Enjoy the nice weather while it's here. It's been a beautiful September. But until tomorrow, have a great day, everybody, and we'll talk soon.